What is going on, everyone? Welcome to Mock Draft Monday. We're going to be doing things a little bit differently here today. Instead of making my own mock draft, I am going to be reacting to someone else's mock draft, and that someone else is going to be Daniel Jeremiah, the lead draft analyst for the NFL Network. I love DJ and all of his work. Definitely encourage you to check out his mock draft along with his podcast, the Move the Sticks podcast that he's got with Bucky Brooks. Great draft content. Go check it out. And I'm going to be reacting to the picks that he makes in this mock draft. But I'm going to be critical, but I'm not trying to be critical of his actual work, his mock draft. What I'm going to do is look at the picks that he slotted in and react to how I would feel if the teams made those picks, because DJ makes his drafts in much more of a predictive format as opposed to me, where I'm kind of looking at my own evaluations, how I would draft, whereas he's very dialed in. He is more predicting, like, these are some potential landing spots for these players based on what he's hearing. So this is going to give us an opportunity to maybe look at some other players that I haven't talked about as much in my mock drafts, as well as some different landing spots for these guys that I wouldn't necessarily make in my mock draft. So I'm really looking forward to it. Do let me know in the comments down below if you enjoy this format so I can know to do more videos like this. You can also hit that like button to show your support. And I am now back from all of my travels over the last couple of months. Got a little sunburn going. Had an amazing vacation in Mexico. Much needed as we gear up for really a 5-6 week stretch now leading up to the draft, where it's going to be pedal to the metal. Content's going to pick up. We're going to have my top 10 tight ends video coming out later this week, along with plenty of awesome content. We've got some good guests lined up. So go and pedal to the metal. Make sure you're subscribed if you enjoy my draft content. And let's get into it with Daniel Jeremiah's mock draft 3.0. So the first pick is actually Bryce Young, and I have not seen this mock draft yet. So these are honest live reactions here, and this is very fascinating to me. I didn't know he did this, and I was looking at the gambling odds this morning of who's the gambling favorite to be the number one pick, and right now CJ Stroud is heavily favored. And what does he say? Panthers will do their homework, and by the end of the day, basically, Bryce Young will emerge as their target. And I think that's so well said and very similar to my thinking on it. Like right now, CJ Stroud, everyone's saying, oh, Josh McCown made a YouTube video talking about how much he likes CJ Stroud. Josh McCown is their quarterbacks coach. Frank Reich has never drafted a short quarterback. And, there's a press conference where they ask him, is Bryce Young's size an issue? And Frank Reich said, it's something you have to think about, but it also hasn't held back Russell Wilson or Drew Brees from being Hall of Fame quarterbacks, so you have to take the whole thing into the picture. And I genuinely believe that they really like both of these players, and I think they are potentially closer on these two than maybe myself or like the Texans are, because maybe Frank Reich is a little bit more traditionally minded and he wants the bigger-bodied pocket passer, even though Bryce Young is a better passer from the pocket than CJ Stroud. But I really do believe that by the end of the month of watching film, they have to get this pick right after everything they gave up to go get him. Bryce Young will emerge as their QB1, or at least there's a good chance that he will, because his film is better. He's a better prospect, and seemingly everybody agrees. So is a YouTube video by Josh McCown and the fact that Frank Reich hasn't had the opportunity to draft a short quarterback before really enough for them to take a lesser prospect? That seems kind of silly to me. So to me, I would love this if the Panthers went against the grain and picked the best quarterback in this draft. They gave up all those picks. They gave up DJ Moore. They've now put some free agents in front for Bryce Young to step in right away and compete in the NFC South. And I would applaud them for that move. Whereas if they moved up for CJ Stroud, who I view as a higher floor, lower ceiling. I think Bryce Young is a higher floor and ceiling, but CJ Stroud, my comp for him was Jared Goff with wheels. I think CJ Stroud's a good prospect. I think he's better than I expected. But if you're going to give up that much and move up to the number one pick and then pass on a guy like Bryce Young, I would be critical of that. So I would love this for the Panthers' sake. And then for the Texans, Honestly, I don't love taking CJ Stroud here. I just don't. I think for Houston, they don't have the urgency to win right now that a team like Carolina has or so many teams have. I think Houston can have the foresight here, really, if they don't get Bryce Young. And this is why I consistently trade up to go get Bryce Young, because I don't like sitting here not getting him. But for me, I would rather take like Will Anderson here or trade out of this spot and get a bunch more picks than take CJ Stroud. Next year's quarterback class looks awesome. You're going to be in a prime position, especially if you get another first-round pick in next year's class from probably a bad team to go get CJ Stroud. I would much rather do that than stay put and take Stroud. I just think Stroud's a good quarterback prospect. I think he's worthy of the number 2 pick, but I think the Texans will have an opportunity to get better quarterbacks in their near future than to just take CJ Stroud. So I would actually be fairly critical. I'd say it's fine. Like, you got your quarterback. It's not the end of the world. But to me, I just think that's hitting a double instead of being patient and potentially getting, an elite guy somewhere down the road. Cardinals, I'm assuming there's no trades in this. Maybe there are, but the Cardinals staying put, taking Will Anderson. I've done this myself. I think this makes sense. I think, unless you're getting a bounty of picks from someone, just take the blue chip edge defender that is going to be perfect for their system, and they so desperately need defensive blue chip talent. And I would applaud this pick. I would be down for them to trade down, but I'm all for them staying put and taking Will Anderson as well. Which I think everybody's saying they need to trade this pick. I'm not so sure, because the players you're taking at 9 or 11 or 8 aren't as high floor. They're not blue chip prospects like Will Anderson, right? So I'm all for that. Then the Colts at 4 taking Anthony Richardson. It works for me, and it's growing on me the more I think about Shane Steichen settling in there and what he did with Jalen Hurts and tapping into that mobility. The designed QB run game was so well run, and just the balance of RPOs and play action and using that quarterback in the run game was really dynamic in Philadelphia. So I could get behind that. He'd probably be forced to start a little bit sooner than I'd be comfortable. I just don't know how long they want to stay with Gardner Minshew there. And my thing with Anthony Richardson, as I said, is, I want him to sit and learn for a year behind an established starter, because he's so raw as a prospect. He's only started 1 year. But I'm down for this pick. I think between that, Will Levis, very similar grades on both those guys. And as he said, Will Levis could easily be the pick, but they're going to have to take a quarterback there unless they end up with Lamar Jackson. Then the Seattle Seahawks at 5, and he has them taking Jalen Carter, so he's not as afraid of Jalen Carter's off-field stuff as I think some teams will be, or he projects that the Seahawks won't be. Can totally see this happening. No issue with this pick. It really just comes down to how teams feel about his interviews. They're going to be doing a lot more digging into his character, his off-field. Is it something they can be comfortable with him, and hopefully he can mature into a professional athlete that can stay out of trouble. So I would be totally fine with this pick. That interior pass rush would be pretty sweet. And with Will Anderson gone, no real issues with this pick. Then the Lions taking Devin Witherspoon. I finally got into Witherspoon's tape. God, I love him. He's going to probably finish as my number 3 player in this class. Or at least right now, Jalen Carter's graded red right now with the same number grade as Devin Witherspoon. But God, he's so similar to Jair Alexander. He's so freaking quick and physical, so sticky in coverage. He'd be such a good fit for Detroit. And with Anthony Richardson gone, I think he'd be my pick. All right. Even though they spent a bunch of money on free agency at corner, guys like I got the Our Lads up here. Guys like Emmanuel Mosley is like a 1-year program. Jeff Okudah is, he's been up and down. He had a really good first half of last year, but he's not established as their long-term answer by any means. Sutton's going to be there. And then they also signed, they signed Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. I thought they picked up someone else. Maybe I'm making that up. But if nothing else, that makes it make more sense. Love Devon Witherspoon to Detroit as long as Anthony Richardson is gone. Then they have the Raiders taking Tyree Wilson. That's interesting to me because the one position the Raiders are okay at is edge. The Raiders have not really done anything in free agency to address that defense quite yet. A little bit surprised not to see Will Levis off the board. I do feel like if Levis is there at 7, they'll take him because that quarterback position is just so important. And Jimmy Garoppolo he's a bridge quarterback and he's an injury risk. But I suppose with Carter and Witherspoon gone, if you don't want to take a quarterback, Wilson would make sense. But even then, I would think about Christian Gonzalez. You don't draft for need. You draft best player available, and that's what they're doing with Tyree Wilson, or at least most valuable player position available. But I don't think that, I think Gonzalez is a better prospect than Tyree Wilson is overall, even if the position is slightly less valuable. I'm just kind of playing devil's advocate here. I think it'd be a fine pick. I think there's probably some Raiders fans that be a little bit disappointed in that pick too, though, because they do have 2 edge rushers, even though Chandler Jones is on the way out. And then the Falcons fall into Christian Gonzalez's 8. So another team passing on Will Levis. At this point, one of these 2 teams should probably take Will Levis. I guess maybe I'm at the point where I'm just high on Will Levis, but can't really argue either with getting Christian Gonzalez. I've talked about this being a fit. I've made this pick myself. And that turns all of a sudden into one of the best secondaries in the league after they signed Jesse Bates. Chicago Bears taking Peter Skoronski. Okay, Skoronski is one of these guys that I haven't quite gotten to his film yet. There's a few of these first-round guys that have just kind of slipped through the cracks as far as my evaluations. Maybe I'll end up liking him more than Paris Johnson, but I do think Paris Johnson really fits what they want to do in the run game with the athleticism. I know Skoronski's a good athlete as well, and you're staying home with Northwestern, so I'm all right with it. And let's move on. The Eagles taking Lucas Van Ness at 10. Definitely fits what they like to do, replenish the D-line. And both the top 2 corners are gone. I get that. Jalen Carter's gone. Honestly, if I'm the Eagles here, I would take Bijan instead of Lucas Van Ness. Van Ness would work out there, but they have some edge players, do they not? I know they have Josh Sweat. They have Hassan Reddick, obviously. Isn't super old, right? Hassan Reddick is 28, so he's going to be around for a couple more years. Sweat's a good player. I don't know, man. I would rather just take Bijan and plug him in there, or take a corner than take Lucas Van Ness. I wouldn't be a huge fan of that pick. I think he'd work out. He'd be a good player, but man, they're trying to win a Super Bowl right now. They don't really have a running back. They have Kenneth Gainwell, Rashad Penny. I'd take Bijan there, man. If the board fell this way, both the corners are gone and Jalen Carter's gone, or trade out of the pick and see if someone wants to come get Will Levis. But I would take Bijan there. I just would. Tennessee Titans taking Jackson Smith and Jigba. I mean, I think the Titans would take... I don't want to spoil too much here. Titans would take Will Levis here, man. I think Levis fits their system really well. He's good off of play action, really good attack in the middle of the field. I think he'd work excellently with Treylon Burks, not just attack in the middle of the field, but that quick release, getting the ball in his hands. I really don't think Levis is going to fall this far, and I don't think he should. And if he fell to 11, I think the Titans, with all of the reports of them ready to move off of Tannehill, they're not a team that's expecting to be picking very high next year. People are way too low on the Titans. They're still going to have a great defense. I would take Will Levis here, keep him in that area of the country. Jackson Smith and Jigba is a really good player, but the other thing is the Titans, maybe they're trying to really mix up their offense, but Jackson Smith and Jigba is going to be at his best in 11 personnel with 3 wide receivers on the field. And that means Jackson Smith and Jigba would have to play a lot of outside wide receiver in their offense. I wouldn't like that pick. I would rather take Will Levis there. I mean, he's a good player. I'm not trying to rip Jackson Smith and Jigba, but disagreed with the landing spot there. Houston Texans taking Myles Murphy. You know, he would fit what oh goodness. D'Amico Ryans. First time I haven't been able to recall his name. He would fit the system there, bigger bodied, kind of pocket pushing edge guy, really good on those stunts and stuff that they're going to run a million of in Houston. But it is too rich for me to go with Myles Murphy. I would rather take a guy like Quentin Johnston, maybe to provide some more playmakers for CJ Stroud. I know like the corners are gone. I am lower on Myles Murphy. I have him as more of a late first kind of guy. So, yeah, I wouldn't love this pick for the Texans. I can see it happening. It makes sense schematically and as a need, and is very realistic of Daniel Jeremiah to mock him here. But I personally would not be very fond of that pick. The Jets taking Nolan Smith would be pretty crazy. They are a crowded edge group, but a lot of those guys aren't like huge answers. Again, I really disagree here, though. I would take Paris Johnson and rush that up to the podium. So if you look at the Jets' depth chart here, like I don't think that's bad value for Nolan Smith, and I get that he would provide a spark that isn't necessarily something they have. Now, I think they have it in Bryce Huff, and he's a restricted free agent right now. But, you know, with Lawson, John Franklin Myers, Jermaine Johnson, Michael Clemens played that big-bodied edge role last year. I just think you need to solidify this offensive line for Aaron Rodgers, and I would take Paris Johnson. I just think that's a no-brainer pick. Like, I don't think I need to say a whole lot more than that. I would disagree with them taking Nolan Smith. I also don't know how well he fits. I know Bryce Huff's a smaller guy. They prefer to kind of have more powerful, you know. The more I'm saying that, I can see Nolan Smith with all the stunts and stuff that Robert Salah is going to run. I can see it a little bit more, but yeah, I disagree with the selection. I really do. Okay, New England Patriots taking Bijan. Paris Johnson falling to 15 is just pretty. I think Paris Johnson's a really good prospect. I think he's similar to how I felt about Andrew Thomas coming out. I think the Patriots would take Paris Johnson. Are we that low on Ramondre Stevenson? And they just drafted Pierre Strong, right? The running back from. They signed James Robinson, Pierre Strong, out of South Dakota State last year. I don't see this one personally. I think corner, like either corner or tackle with Paris Johnson and all those guys available, I really disagree with that. So that's 4 picks in a row, even 5 picks in a row that I would be pretty questioning of those teams if they made those picks. Okay, Green Bay Packers taking Paris Johnson. If he's there, that's a total Packers pick. Now, I think the Packers are much more comfortable with their tackle situation than the outward public seems to feel. Look, David Bakhtiari, I get he's had some scary stuff with the knee issue. I think people in their minds are, because he kept like trying to play on the knee and couldn't do it over the 2-year recovery period. I think in their minds, they're mixing that up with a complete fluky my apologies, appendectomy. Did I say that right? I need to bring in my wife to correct me on how to pronounce that. But I think they're confusing that with the knee injury and saying, oh, he just couldn't get healthy. No, he came back from the knee, was balling out, one of the best tackles in the NFL, and then had a freaky abdomen injury that he eventually recovered from. But David Bakhtiari is 30 years old. You look at players at that position around the league are playing forever. I honestly think they believe David Bakhtiari has a lot of good football left in the tank. I think David Bakhtiari feels that way. They also drafted Zach Tom in the 4th round last year, who was outstanding. I think they feel very comfortable with him as their long-term right tackle, and they have Yosh Nijman, who has got a 2nd-round tender. Like, I think they are very comfortable with their tackle situation. Now, would they go best player available and take the freaky Ohio State offensive lineman, I could see them doing it. But personally, I just want to point out that I think the Packers are much more comfortable with their tackle situation than I tend to see out there. Washington Commanders taking Dalton Kincaid. I made this in my last mock draft, and there are similarities between Dalton Kincaid and Travis Kelce. You have Eric Bieniemy coming over. It fills a need. I could totally see this. I'd probably rather take a guy like Deonte Banks or Joey Porter, but that said, I think I did take Kincaid over Joey Porter, but Deonte Banks especially, I think I would rather take him. More valuable position, but no issue with the selection, and all of a sudden, that is a dynamic group of playmakers for the Commanders. Pittsburgh Steelers, I do not think would pass on Joey Porter Jr. I just don't think they would do it. Like, I get Roderick Jones, developmental tackle, could be a really good player for them. But with the bloodlines and the needs that the Steelers have at corner, they just lost Cam Sutton. If I pull this up, they have Patrick Peterson, who's a one-year Band-Aid at best. They have Levi Wallace, who's a low-end two. Akella Witherspoon was fine last year. Arthur Mollett. Like, come on, let's get some real talent in that cornerback room. It's a system that definitely needs good corners. They run a lot of man, a lot of match zone stuff that is, you need good bump and run guys. Like, I don't get why they would pass on Joey Porter here. Maybe he's just trying to be different because everybody mocks him there. But Porter, to me, is like exactly the 17th best player in this class. Fits a need, fits the scheme. His dad played for the Steelers. I just don't get why you need to overcomplicate it. Just take Joey Porter. Okay, the Lions take Kalijah Kancey. He would fit there. He really would, because they have a bigger bodied guy next to him, Aleem McNeil. He can play 3-tech. He can play 4-eye. I really like this. Kancey's a unique player because, again, Will Levis continues to fall, by the way. Wouldn't the Commanders take Will Levis? I don't know. But yeah, fits the need. Getting him and Witherspoon, that defense could really surprise some people. I mean, you have talent at all three levels. Still, second-round picks to grab a linebacker maybe. Really like that spot for Kalijah Kancey. He's a really fun player. I actually just did a film breakdown of him on my Patreon, and you can go check that out if you want. Okay, the Bucs getting Will Levis at 19. I think you guys know my thoughts on this would be that's a remarkable steal for the Bucs. He gets to go into a team. They have lost some offensive linemen, so he might be back to the same situation at Kentucky, but where he's running for his life. But he wouldn't be unfamiliar with that, and he's got receivers. It'd be a great spot if he went there. I don't think he falls that far, though. I think Levis is going to go in the top. I think 11 to Tennessee is his floor. Seahawks getting Jordan Addison makes a lot of sense. They have had a lot of success with smaller wide receivers, guys like Tyler Lockett, and he can play from the slot and kind of get lost in that system in the first year, and then gives them an out for Tyler Lockett down the road. I've mocked receiver to the Seahawks quite a lot with Jackson Smith and Jigba gone. I'm all about it. Chargers take Zay Flowers. I think that works just fine. He is a deep threat, even if he doesn't have the true 4.3 speed that I thought he might bring out at the combine. But he is able to win deep through his route running and really good release. He's really strong. He doesn't get brushed off of contact like a guy like Jalen Hyatt does. So I think Flowers there with Keenan Allen working the middle of the field and Mike Williams on the outside to be a really fun fit for the Chargers. Okay, this is getting interesting. So Joey Porter, the Ravens, that would, yeah, I mean, the rivalry would continue to get better there. Total perfect fit. If Joey Porter is there for Baltimore, they're popping champagne. Just hopefully they have a quarterback that can win games for them. But yeah, that's a great fit. They love press man corners. Joey Porter is probably the second or third best press man corner in this class. No way. No way do you take Hendon Hooker at 23. Like, he's going to be 26 years old. He does not have this. He's not a draft and develop quarterback. I just don't get this. I really don't. A best case scenario is Hendon Hooker becomes the player that Kirk Cousins is. Kirk Cousins is, what, 34, 35? No real. It's not like Kirk Cousins has any signs of slowing down. Kirk Cousins is only 8 years older than Hendon Hooker. I just don't think this makes sense. Not with a guy like Deonte Banks on the table. Not with a guy like Quentin Johnston on the table. Wide receiver or corner could be dominant picks for them. I would think that'd be a horrible pick, personally. And I'm not trying to trash Hendon Hooker. I think there's spots where he makes sense. But as a long-term replacement to Kirk Cousins, no. Like, the Vikings need a guy like Trey Lance, Anthony Richardson, someone last year like Sam Howell or Malik Willis, guys with, like, athletic, arm talent, upside, not a 26-year-old quarterback with mid-traits. I don't think that makes any sense. Not in the first round. Maybe in the second. The Jags sniping Deonte Banks, that'd be incredible. That cornerback room would be really fun. He could play from the slot. I think Deonte Banks absolutely has the skill set to do that. My only concern with this pick is that they're putting Darius Williams back into the slot, which I think he's shown he's not a slot corner. You want to keep him on the outside. Excuse me, I'm going to get some water. I'm losing my voice. All right, the New York Giants taking Joe Tippmann. I haven't watched Tippmann yet, so I'm going to reserve judgment on if this is too high or not. I know that Brandon Thorne really likes Joe Tippmann. I just had them taking John Michael Schmitz as a center, so I can see exactly what DJ is thinking here. I'll be surprised if I like Tippmann more than John Michael Schmitz. I think John Michael Schmitz is a top 30 player in this class. I think he's very similar to what Creed Humphreys was. And it's very ironic that I just listened to the Bootleg Football podcast with Brandon Thorne. He compared Tippmann, I think, to Josh Myers. So this could potentially be a Green Bay taking Josh Myers over Creed Humphreys situation all over again if this were to happen. Not saying that that's how I feel about Joe Tippmann. Haven't watched him yet. Going to get to him sometime this week. But, I at this point, I think John Michael Schmitz probably a better player, but I do like the selection of an interior offensive lineman. And I think a lot of New York Giants fans did as well. Hey, we made this pick last week. That's a ring the bell moment right there. I love this for the Cowboys. They've filled their needs in free agency. They're really going for it this year. Maisie Smith is going to be around the 40th best player in this draft. Once you get into the late first round, I think it's okay to overdraft a little bit for need, especially when you're really going for it. The NFC is wide open. Mazzie Smith, remarkable run stuffer, excellent block shed ability. I think he would plug in right there as the perfect fit on that D-line. He is the last piece they've needed. They've struggled so hard to find a guy that can play that role for them. Absolutely love this fit. Made it myself last week. The Bills getting Quentin Johnston at 27. Chef's kiss. I don't think Quentin Johnston should fall this far. It's funny, when I very first did his eval in January, he was like a top 10 pick consensus. And then I watched his tape and I was like, I don't know, he's pretty freaking good, but he's kind of a hands catcher. He's not the ball winner that he could be at his size. But I still think he's a really freaking good player. He's still my wide receiver one. I think he's the only guy in this draft, really, unless Keyshawn Boutte can figure his life out, really that has or maybe A.T. Perry or some random guy completely surprises, but legitimate hopes that he could be a true alpha X wide receiver. I think Quentin Johnston, if he can get the ball skills to work out a little bit better, can get there. I think his route running at this point is being drastically underappreciated. His release is being underappreciated. I think his speed is getting underappreciated. So to me, to get him at 27 is a huge steal. And for the Bills to get him next to Stephon Diggs gives them that number 2 that they thought Gabe Davis was going to be last year. Okay, Darnell Wright to the Bengals. I think they could do this for sure. He could play guard for them in year one if they wanted to. Sounds like, okay, Jonah Williams has requested a trade, so and I think Lyle Collins could also play guard, so I'm totally down with this. I drafted Osiris Torrance to play guard for them. Totally down for Darnell Wright. I think the value is good. He's probably probably a slightly better player overall than Osiris Torrance, so makes sense to me. Saints take Michael Mayer at 29. Okay. You know, it's not the worst pick in the world, and maybe I'm just a little bit of a Adam Troutman believer, but they also have Johnson, right? The converted receiver from Oregon. What's his first name? Juwan Johnson. Got Adam Troutman. Taysom Hill's going to be doing his tight end stuff. I think the value's fine. He'd be their number one tight end. But for me, you got to look at this D line. Like, dude, Cam Jordan is 34 this year. You have Nathan Shepard and Colin Saunders are your defensive tackles, and Carl Granderson, Peyton Turner, Tano Passignon. Isn't there still an edge guy available that would make sense here, especially if he's got Felix Anaduke-Uzama going here? I guess the only guy left for me that would make sense is BJ Ojulari, but for him, he's got back-to-back edge players after this. I don't know. It's fine. It would just be a very pick. I like Michael Mayer. I think he's a really high floor, low ceiling tight end. But it's just not a very exciting pick. But with the way the board fell, there's worse things you could do, I suppose. So the Eagles take. All right. I said I wasn't going to be critical of Daniel Jeremiah. I said I wasn't going to do it. But I will say this, DJ, with all due respect, and I love your work. Did you forget that they already took Lucas Van Ness? Because to me, this is overkill with the edge. I also, I know it's what you're hearing and everything, but I disagree. I think that's a little bit too rich for Felix. I think he's more of a second-round guy. But hey, not going to nitpick that. But I think this is overkill with the edge. I think for the Eagles, there's Brian Branch is available at this point. I would rather take a guy like Josh Downs to be a dominant slot player for them. I think there's so many other ways they could go with this pick than taking another edge player that I don't even think is that high upside of a player. Now, I'd love to see what he could do learning from Brandon Graham, because there's some similarities there between Uzama and Brandon Graham, but I don't think he has the raw power that Brandon Graham had. So I really disagree with that. I think defensive back, or like I said, I just think there's other directions that would make a lot more sense for the Eagles. Even offensive line, taking a guy like DeJuan Jones or something would be a better pick. Kansas City Chiefs taking Will McDonald. Makes sense. I personally like BJ Ojulari a decent enough more than Will McDonald. So if the Chiefs made this pick, I would disagree with the value assessment. But I do like Will McDonald as well. I think that'd be fine. So definitely was able to get some picks in here that I disagreed with, which I expected to happen. Again, it's all in good faith. Go check out Daniel Jeremiah's podcast, the Move the Sticks podcast. It's one of the best draft shows out there for sure. And that is all we've got here. Definitely let me know your feedback down below. Do you like this format? Do like the video. Make sure you subscribed as well. Next video here is going to be my top 10 tight end breakdown. Also going to have an episode of the Fully Inflated Football podcast on Wednesday, so make sure you're subscribed to that. My second channel with the podcast is in the description below. Otherwise, you can just search Fully Inflated Football wherever you get your podcasts. That's all we got. Thank you for watching. We'll see you for the next one. Peace out.